A cheerful good morning and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you present today in the science class. Okay, before going ahead with our today's discussion, I hope you all would have celebrated Diwali very nicely, as well as a safe Diwali would have been played by you. Okay, and I hope the crackers also must be used by you as well as your parents and everyone whomsoever you may concern wisely, so that your part in the pollution would be as much less as possible. Okay, starting with our today's discussion. So as all of us we know, that is, this COVID is, the situation is more or less better only day by day, but let us see, just after 1 to 2 days we would be able to know, as some of the crackers which has been released, or the pollutants which has been released, or the pollution level which has been increased as a result of these crackers, they will be basically determining the amount of pollution in our city, the formation of smog in our city, and at the same time the number of COVID cases which are going to increase or decrease. Each and everything we will be able to get within just few short span of weeks. I don't think 1 week is also more than enough to get all the awared results regarding these things. Okay, so let us start with our today's discussion. Okay, I hope this is 4 days holidays or a gap of these festive seasons would have given you some relief as well, just after the pressure from your half yearly examinations and immediately just after your classes have begun. So let us start or continue. If you remember, we have already started this chapter, that was your air and water, and in this chapter as well we have completed this air portion and we have started the water. What I remember is that, and I hope you also would remember the same thing, that is, we have to start with the properties of the water. This part, if you remember, we have discussed, that is, how water is important for us, how we have to define water. If you remember, I told you H2O, or it is a compound of hydrogen and oxygen. Then I told you about the percentage of water present on the earth's surface, how much it is, how much we can use it, or what is the usable form of it. Okay, so all these things we have already discussed. Today we are going to start with this part, that is the properties of water. In this case, that is the properties of water. Basically we will be dealing about the physical properties as well as some other characteristics of water. Okay, starting with this, first we have, that is, it is a colorless, odorless and tasteless liquid. That is, when we are talking about colorless, so I hope all of you would be able to understand what is the meaning of this colorless. That is, it does not have any color. But when we talk about the odorless, so odor basically refers to your smell. Okay, so neither it has any color nor it has any smell, and at the same time, apart from these two things, it does not has any taste as well. Okay, that is why it is tasteless. So that is why all these three are the main properties, that is, it is a colorless, odorless and tasteless liquid. Water exists in all the three forms of matter in nature, that is your solid, that is in the form of snow and ice, liquid in the form of water, and gas in the form of water vapor and steam. Okay, so these are the three states of water in which it exists. Basically, if you remember in the chapter matter, we have discussed, that is, how this solid, liquid and gas, what are the characteristic properties, that is the molecular arrangement, and at the same time in which form they are present. That is, in the case of solid, you remember we discussed about the ice, in liquid simply water, and in the gas we discussed about the water vapors as well. Okay, so basically these it is one of the most common matter, you can say, this water, or it is one of the most common liquid which is present in all the three forms. Otherwise, most of the liquids you will find that either they are present only in one or the other forms, but it is very difficult for them, or they are mostly not present in all the three forms. You can do it experimentally, but normally they are not present. Okay, but here in the case of water, what we are able to find, whatever the colder regions are there, that is your Siachen is there, Jammu and Kashmir, all these Uttarakhand regions are there. Basically there you will be able to find the solid forms of this water, that is the solid existence of water in the form of snow and ice. Liquid, the entire world is using it in the form of water, and last but not the least, that is your gaseous form. continuously we are in our day-to-day life activities, as well as from the water bodies, 70% which are present there, due to the heat of the sun, continuously the evaporation is taking place, giving rise to the formation of water vapor. Moving ahead with this, so we have water can dissolve many things. More substances dissolve in water than in any other liquid, so water is called the universal solvent. This is one of the very most important characteristics of water, that is water is known as the universal solvent. This water is known as the universal solvent because it is able to dissolve many solutes into it. Okay, solutes basically means, that is I'm telling you, this is, you'll be studying in your higher classes, I'm just giving you a glimpse of it. Okay, just have a look over this part. Okay, whenever we are talking about dissolving anything in water, okay, so basically we discuss about this part, we discuss about this solution. Okay, so what is solution is basically, solution is equal to solute plus solvent. So when we are talking about this solution, so we are basically referring to, that is solute plus solvent. Now if you take the example of this, any example, whichever one you take, if you take the example of the lemonade. Okay, so this lemonade is representing the solution. Okay, lemonade is basically what, lemon ka juice. Okay, so lemonade is representing the solution in which lemon. Now see, one more thing, this solute can be one or many, the solvent can also be one or many. Okay, so here what we have is that in the case of lemonade, the solute part is your lemon plus sugar. Okay, sugar is also one of the solutes. Okay, and apart from this, the solvent part, that is your water. Okay, it is this water which is known as the solvent, and in the water your lemon as well as the sugar, they get dissolved. Okay, if you take another example, that will be much more clear, as this is having a mixture. If you directly take salt solution. Okay, so salt solution is what, it is one of the solutions basically. Okay, and it is containing salt as the solute plus water as the solvent. So here in this way you'll be able to understand it in a much better way, that is solvent is what, solvent is anything in which you dissolve something. कोई भी एक ऐसी चीज जिसमें हम किसी चीज को dissolve करते हैं, that is known as your solvent. And solute is what, जिसको हम dissolve करते हैं, that is known as your solute. And when both of them combine, that is solute plus solvent, together they form the solution. Is that clear? Example, salt solution, in which the solute is the salt and the solvent is the water. So since water is able to dissolve more and more amount of solute into it, आप उसमें देखोगे कि आपकी मैक्सिमम चीज़ें उसमें डिजॉल्व हो जाती हैं. ठीक है, बल्कि ऐसा आप और किसी लिक्विड जैसे ऑयल को ले लीजिए, तो ऑयल में आपकी सारी चीज़ें नहीं डिजॉल्व होंगी. सो दिस इज द मेन रीज़न why we call this water to be, or we consider this water to be as a universal solvent, just because it is able to dissolve a number of solutes into it. Is that clear? Moving ahead with this. Okay, now in that case, if the substances such as sugar and salt that dissolve completely in water, they are known as soluble substances, and the substances such as sand and wood that do not dissolve in water are called insoluble substances. And we have two of the activities related to this. This is very simple, I hope, and I hope all of you would be able to understand this part very nicely. That is, soluble means वो सारी चीजें जो water में mix हो जाए, dissolve हो जाए, that is known as your soluble substances. And all those substances which do not get dissolved in water, they are known as your insoluble substances. ठीक है, इसको एक्टिविटी के थ्रू भी हमें समझना है, बट बिफोर दैट प्लीज ट्राई टू हैव अ क्लियर कंसेप्ट रिलेटेड टू दिस पार्ट. ओके, okay, suppose we have here is, that is a water, a glass of water we have taken. Okay, this is having water present inside it. Okay, this is containing water. Okay, leave this part. Glue points from file, leave it. Okay, this is containing water. Suppose if we take here, all right, if this is having water present in it, so if we fill here water basically, okay, now in this water, when we pour anything like this, suppose when we are adding here, okay, what is that we are adding? We are adding basically here, okay, either we are going to add salt or we are going to add sugar, okay, anything, take any one example to be, okay. And second part, what we are going to add is we are going to take sand, and these three things we have taken. So one by one, if we put this part, when we put salt in water, so what do we find? We find this salt gets dissolved in water, and after some time it disappears, okay. What we are able to see, that is salt gets dissolved in this water and the entire salt gets disappeared, and only you are able to see that water which was originally present, okay. So this shows that this salt is getting dissolved in water. That is why salt is a soluble substance. Moving ahead with the next part, that is when we are talking about sugar. So in the similar way, we will change that water and we will take a little amount of water. We will add some sugar into it. What we will find, again we will find that our entire sugar particles, they get dissolved in water or they get disappeared in water, okay. So this is again showing this part also, that is sugar is also soluble in water. But when we take the third part, that is when we are taking sand into it, and when we add it into the water, what do we find? We find that this sand does not get dissolved in water, but it keeps on settling at the bottom, okay. If you try to mix it thoroughly, either with the help of a spoon or with the help of a rod, glass rod or any stick, what do you find? You find that this sand, it keeps on revolving into the water when you are shaking it or when you are stirring it. But after a certain moment of time, after a short span of time, you will be able to observe that all these sand particles, they settle at the bottom of this container or they settle at the bottom of the beaker. So in this way, these two parts, or in this way we are able to prove here, that is this sand is not able to dissolve in water, it does not get disappeared in water. That is why it is an insoluble substance, whereas the salt or the sugar, they are the soluble substances. Now let us go through that activity which is given, okay. So in the case of this activity, the very first activity is fill half of the glass of water, add a spoonful of sugar to it and mix it with a spoon. You will see that the sugar disappears, and I hope that this line, you will see that the sugar disappears. I hope you would have remembered how it disappears and why does it disappears. Do you remember that when I have taught you the states of matter? What happens to the substances when you dissolve them, okay. Liquid particles or the liquid molecules, they have certain spaces in between them, and when you add these solid particles, so what happens, all these solid particles, they occupy the spaces present in between the liquids, and that is why they get disappear, ठीक है. तो ये याद रखिएगा, मैंने आपको उसका बहुत अच्छे से एक्सप्लेन किया था इस बात को, okay. So please don't forget that. So that is the main reason why sugar or salt, it gets disappeared when you dissolve in water, because whatever the little bit intercellular spaces are present in between the liquid molecules, they get occupied by these solid particles, that is the soluble substances. Moving ahead, we have, okay, now see, due to the disappearance of the sugar particles, it gets dissolved in the water and makes it to taste sweet. Now here the properties of water is getting changed whenever you are going to add something. Like here you have seen or you have studied that water is a tasteless liquid. It does not have any taste in it. But the moment you add some sugar particles into it and they get disappeared, and then you drank this water, you will be able to observe that this water becomes sweeter in taste, which was earlier tasteless. Now the same water is sweeter in taste. Therefore we say that sugar is soluble in water. Okay, next we have this activity, that is, fill half of the glass of water, add a quarter spoonful of mustard seeds into it and mix it with the spoon. Here it has taken mustard seeds. You can take the gram seeds, you can take the bean seeds, or even you can take the pea seeds as well. Anyone, whichever one you feel like. Okay. The mustard seeds do not disappear. They settle down at the bottom of the glass. They do not dissolve in water. Therefore, we say that mustard seeds are insoluble in water. Okay. So this part shows, that is, since the mustard seeds, they were not able to disappear, they were only settling down at the bottom of this glass. That is why we are saying, that is, these mustard seeds, they are insoluble in water. Okay, so in this way we are able to prove that there are some substances, there are some things which are soluble in water, and at the same time there are some substances which are insoluble in water. Moving ahead with this, we have the next step, that is the purification of water. When we are talking about the purification of water, so basically what is the use for it, first and the foremost thing, and thereafter we'll be going ahead. Okay. When we are talking about the purification of water, so basically try to remember, that is, purification of water is required whenever the water becomes dirty or it becomes unfit for drinking or unfit for use. Okay, large scale purification of water is also done, and a small scale purification of water is also done. Okay, the purifiers which you use at your home, they are also purifying the water, though it is pure only, but still you are purifying it much more better, so that you may not get into any kind of trouble. Okay, you are removing all the minerals and everything from there. So that is also one of the purifications. In the same way as your purifiers are being doing your work, there are certain other processes as well by which we can purify the water and we can use it for our day-to-day life activities. Okay, the wastewater treatment plants, they used to collect the wastewater, treat it by physical, chemical and biological means, and again give back the fresh water, which can be again utilized for our domestic purposes. Let us go ahead with this. So some common impurities found in the water are soil, remains of dead plants and animals, waste from the houses and industries. Some of them are soluble while some others are insoluble. Both soluble and insoluble impurities must be removed from the water before we use it. Now see the things which are present in it. That is, first and the foremost thing, soil. Okay, so this soil is not very much harmful, but it can be harmful if it is present in larger amounts. Okay, because the soil cannot be digested by our body. So if it goes in more amount by us in our body through water, then we may start suffering from some or the other problems. Remains of dead plants and animals. All of you know that since the plants and animals, they are dead here. Okay, and dead plants are always decomposed by the microbes, that is, they are acted upon certain microorganisms as well. तो जब इनके ऊपर माइक्रोब्स, बैक्टीरिया, फंजाई पहले से ही अटैक कर चुके हैं, और अगर यही चीज़ें हमारे वाटर में भी प्रेजेंट हैं, एंड इफ़ वी कंज्यूम दैट, सो वी विल स्टार्ट सफरिंग फ्रॉम सम और द अदर डिसीजेस. नेक्स्ट वी हैव द इम्प्योरिटीज़ और द वेस्ट फ्रॉम द हाउसेस एंड इंडस्ट्रीज़. ये तब होता है जब आप डायरेक्टली फ्रेश वाटर बॉडीज़ में अपने घर के वेस्ट या इंडस्ट्रीज़ के वेस्ट को डिस्चार्ज कर दें, या फिर दूसरा केस ये भी है कि आप लैंड पे फेंक दें, ठीक है, अपने जितने भी वेस्ट हैं, और वो वेस्ट का टॉक्सिक पार्ट, कोई भी उसका केमिकल या कुछ भी, धीरे धीरे करके एक दिन में नहीं, 2 दिन में नहीं, ठीक है, 2 साल, 5 साल, 10 साल में क्या हो जाए, नीचे के वाटर टेबल तक पहुंच जाए. ठीक है। तो मतलब सॉइल पे फेंका हुआ एक लिक्विड वेस्ट या सॉलिड वेस्ट, उसका केमिकल धीरे धीरे नीचे जाते जाते एब्जॉर्ब, सॉइल ने एब्जॉर्ब किया, फिर पानी बरसा उसके थ्रू और नीचे चला गया। तो ऐसे करते करते वो वाटर टेबल तक पहुंच जाए तो वो भी आपका अनफिट हो जाता है वाटर फॉर यूज, एंड दैट इज वाई वी विल बी यूजिंग द प्यूरिफायर्स, और वी प्यूरिफाई दिस वाटर एंड देन यूज इट फॉर आवर डोमेस्टिक और for the drinking purposes. Moving ahead, so this, out of these ways, some are soluble while some are insoluble, and in order to have the perfect fit water for drinking purposes, it needs to be free from all the soluble and insoluble impurities, except for some of the minerals which are important as well as required by our body as well. Moving ahead with this, so removing the insoluble impurities. Now insoluble means what? That is just like if we have seen here the examples of adding the mustard seeds. So here what we are able to observe, that is it is insoluble. So how we are going to remove that? Insoluble impurities are removed by 3 processes, that is your sedimentation and decantation and your filtration. Okay, sedimentation and decantation, first and the foremost thing, just try to understand, and thereafter we will be reading that part as well. Sedimentation, sediment means जो नीचे बैठ जाता है, that is known as your sediment basically. Okay, sedimentary rocks भी आप लोगों ने पढ़ा है, ठीक है, तो वहाँ से आपको और ज़्यादा अच्छा नॉलेज मिल सकता है. तो sediment basically means the things which settle down at the bottom, they are basically known as your sediments. Okay, decantation means what? When you tilt it anything, okay, that is you are pouring it somewhere. Okay, after the sedimentation, generally both these processes, they are carried out simultaneously. Okay, now see, both the things, that is your sedimentation and decantation, they are carried out simultaneously. How they are done? Let us go through them. The very first one, that is the insoluble impurities, they are allowed to settle down at the bottom of the container of water. This process is called sedimentation. The impurities that settle down at the bottom, they are known as your sediments. Okay, now see, generally in some cases, ठीक है, यहाँ पे भी थोड़ा सा changes है. Changes क्या है? Modifications है basically, कि if that liquid or the water is containing bigger insoluble substances, जैसे mustard की seeds हैं या फिर वो सारी चीज़ें हैं, तो वो बहुत जल्दी settle हो जाता है. ठीक है, बहुत जल्दी हो जाएगा. लेकिन अगर mud के particles हैं, ठीक है, आपके सैंड पार्टिकल्स भी हैवी होते हैं, सो दे ऑल्सो सेटल डाउन वेरी क्विकली. बट इफ यू टेक द मड पार्टिकल्स, सो द मड पार्टिकल्स दे आर लिटिल बिट लाइटर एज कंपेयर टू ऑल दीज थिंग्स, दैट इज योर मस्टर्ड सीड्स और द सैंड. तो अगर आप एक मडी वाटर लेते हैं और उसको छोड़ देते हैं, तो उसको सेटल होने में कम से कम 2 से 4 घंटे या इवन 1 to 2 days भी लग सकते हैं. ठीक है, उसको आप जितने ज़्यादा दिन तक छोड़ेंगे उतना ही ज़्यादा आपका ऊपर का क्लियर वाटर रहेगा और नीचे का धीरे धीरे मड बैठता चला जाएगा. But if you take the example of these mustard seeds or the sand here, तो ये quickly हो जाता है. आप उनको तुरंत stir करिए, आप छोड़िए 5 मिनट के लिए, 10 मिनट के लिए, max to max 15 minutes. ठीक है, ये बहुत ज़्यादा मैंने आपको बता दिया. But you just leave for 5 to 10 minutes, you'll be able to find that all the sand particles or all the mustard seeds, they settle at the bottom. Okay, so all these things, that is the impurities or the things which settle down at the bottom, they are known as your sediments, and the upper part is known as the solvent. Okay, solute and the solvent. Okay, now what we do is that when all these impurities, they settle at the bottom, we start tilting our container slowly and slowly, so that the upper liquid which is there, which is known as supernatant भी हम उसको बोलते हैं. ठीक है, supernatant. ठीक है, नीचे जो बैठ जाता है वो solute. ओके, एंड द अपर लिक्विड विच वी आर गेटिंग, दैट इज नोन एज योर supernatant भी हम उसको बोलते हैं. तो आप बहुत सारे वर्ड्स हैं, आप उसको कैसे भी रिमेंबर कर सकते हो. सो दिस सुपरनेटेंट लिक्विड, या ऊपर जो भी लिक्विड रहता है इम्प्योरिटी सेटल होने के बाद, आप उसको बस खाली टिल्ट कर दीजिए एंड यू विल बी एबल टू फाइंड दैट द वाटर इट गेट्स सेपरेटेड स्लोली. और ये डिकेंटेशन आपको बहुत धीरे धीरे करना है, आप एकाएक नहीं कर सकते. एकाएक करेंगे तो वो आपकी इम्प्योरिटीज भी फिर से उसमें चली जाएंगी, सो यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू सेपरेट इट. That is why what we are going to do is we will be slowly and slowly tilting our container so that the upper liquid gets transferred to another container and the sediment gets left behind in that previous container only. Okay, let us have a further reading and try to understand in a much more better way with some of the illustrations as well. Okay, Now see, the top layer, so these impurities are known as the sediments. The top layer of clean water is gently poured. Gently means slowly, basically poured into another container without disturbing the sediment. This process is known as decantation. Let us see this activity. If you can see, this is known as your decantation basically. Let us have this activity and try to understand here. Fill half of a beaker with water, mix some sand in it, leave it undisturbed. Undisturbed means without disturbing. For 10 minutes, the sand will settle down at the bottom of the beaker. This process is called as sedimentation. Separate the sand from the water by pouring the clear water from the top slowly into another empty beaker. This process is known as your decantation. Now see, if you can see, the person is holding a piece of rod into it. Okay, you can use it or you may not use it depending on you. Okay, the moment you use, basically rod we are using so that the water does not falls little bit outer side or out of the container, and it slowly and slowly goes into the middle, or it gets filled into the container very nicely. Okay, so this is the process of your sedimentation and decantation. Okay, the next process is your filtration. When we are talking about the filtration, so all of us we know filtration in हिंदी में इसको छानना बोलते हैं. ठीक है, आप छान रहे हो किसी चीज़ को. ओके, चाय छानते हो, ठीक है, काढ़ा छानते हो. आजकल काढ़ा लोग पी रहे हैं तो उसे भी लोग छान करके पीते हैं, या कुछ लोग डायरेक्टली भी पी लेते हैं. ओके, बट इन द केस ऑफ योर टी यू विल हैव टू यूज़ अ सीव. सीव मतलब छन्नी. ठीक है, सीव यूज़ करते हैं. ठीक है, कभी कभी आटे को गूंथने के पहले आटे को भी चाला जाता है, सो यू यूज़ अ बिगर सीव इन दैट केस. ओके, so basically all these are what, these are the methods to filter that. Okay, whenever you are doing this part. Okay, जब आप टी प्रिपेयर करके उसको फिल्टर करते हैं, so what happens, your tea leaves get separated on the top. ठीक है, आपके सीव में टी लीव्स रह जाते हैं और वो लिक्विड पार्ट आपका नीचे ग्लास में आ जाता है. So this process is nothing but this process is known as filtration only. Now this filtration can be done by using different kinds of material. जैसे मैंने अभी आपको बताया, एक आप सीव आप अपने घर की छन्नी उठा सकते हो, चलनी ले सकते हैं, आटा चालने वाली चलनी. ओके, द मॉस्किटो नेट्स विच यू आर एबल टू सी आउटसाइड ऑन योर विंडोज. ओके, बेसिकली जो मॉस्किटो नेट्स नहीं, बेसिकली उसको कहेंगे हम मच्छरों को अंदर आने से रोकने के लिए क्या करते हैं, खिड़कियों के बाहर जाली लगवा देते हैं या जाली का दरवाज़ा लगा देते हैं. ठीक है, तो वो भी क्या काम करता है, एक तरीके से सीव का ही काम करता है. वो कंस्ट्रक्शन में यूज़ होता है. ठीक है, जब बालू गिट्टी मिक्स हो जाता है तो उसमें हम क्या करते हैं, उसी चलनी हम उसको बेसिकली बोलते हैं. ठीक है, तो जाल पे हम डाल देते हैं. ठीक है, जो बिगर पीसेस गिट्टी के रहते हैं वो ऊपर रह जाते हैं, बालू के पीसेस छोटे होते हैं तो वो नीचे चले जाते हैं. सो इन दिस वे दे गेट सेपरेटेड. ओके, नाउ हियर सो दिस इज़ वन पार्ट. सीव से हम कर सकते हैं. आप कोई भी कॉटन पे कपड़ा ले सकते हो, कॉटन का कपड़ा, कॉटन क्लोथ्स, यू कैन यूज़ इट फॉर सेपरेटिंग द इनसॉल्युबल इम्प्योरिटीज़. ठीक है, बेसिकली ये भी याद रखिएगा कि फिल्ट्रेशन हम कब यूज़ करते हैं. फिल्ट्रेशन वी यूज़ इट व्हेन देयर आर इनसॉल्युबल इम्प्योरिटीज़ इनटू इट. ठीक है, आप लेमोनेड को फिल्टर करेंगे तो आपको कुछ नहीं मिलने वाला है, खाली थोड़े बहुत लेमन के सीड्स मिल जाएंगे और कुछ लेमन्स के पार्ट्स मिल जाएंगे. ठीक है, बाकी आपका पूरा का पूरा लिक्विड एज इट इज़ रहेगा. ठीक है, तो वो सारे सॉल्यूशंस, वो सारे लिक्विड्स जिसमें इनसॉल्युबल इम्प्योरिटीज़ प्रेजेंट हैं, जैसे आपका मस्टर्ड सीड्स के एग्जांपल में, जैसे आपके टी लीव्स के एग्जांपल में, टी के केस में. ठीक है, चाय पत्ती उसमें इनसॉल्युबल है, वो अपना खाली टेस्ट प्रोवाइड कर देती है उस चाय में. ठीक है, अदरवाइज इट रिमेन्स इनसॉल्युबल ओनली. तो जितने भी इनसॉल्युबल इम्प्योरिटीज़ हैं उसी को रिमूव करने के लिए हम ये फिल्ट्रेशन प्रोसेस करते हैं. ठीक है, तो पहला आप कॉटन क्लोथ से कर सकते हो. मसलिन क्लोथ्स भी आते हैं. ठीक है, कॉटन क्लोथ्स, मसलिन क्लोथ्स. ठीक है, और सीव मैंने आपको बता दिया. फिल्टर पेपर से भी हम कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, अगर आप लोग को दिखाया गया होगा तो दिखाया गया होगा. लैब्स में जब आप जाते हैं तो आपको फिल्टर पेपर दिखाया गया होगा, सर्कुलर शेप का रहता है, मोस्ट प्रोबेबली सर्कुलर शेप के रहते हैं, दूसरे शेप्स के भी आते हैं. उस सर्कुलर शेप के पेपर को हम क्या करते हैं, कोन बना लेते हैं. ठीक है, कोन, और वी टू हैव अ बेटर फिल्टर. जैसे कोन्स होते हैं. ठीक है, अगर आपने देखा होगा तो कुप्पी, हम हिंदी में कुप्पी बोलते हैं, मैं आपको नेक्स्ट क्लास में मोस्ट प्रोबेबली दिखा दूंगा. ठीक है, वी यूज टू मेक इट इन दैट शेप. ओके, एंड वी यूज टू ऐड फिल्टर ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट सो दैट इट वर्क्स इन अ बेटर वे. ओके, So this was all for today. Filtration, we will be having the reading in the next class along with the activities and everything. Today I just gave you a little bit introduction of that. Tomorrow again we'll be meeting ahead with the continuation of the same chapter, and we will try to little bit speed up so that we will be able to complete it, as we have one more chapter left. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit extended more, because I hope this is the 5th class of this air and water, but since this is much more interactive class, much more familiar topic, that is why I am extending little bit much more, giving you more and more examples so that you'll be able to have a much more clear understanding of it. Is that clear? So now this was all for today. Thanks a lot for being with me. Have a superb day ahead, and please have a thorough reading of the chapter, as after the Diwali I know you all would have celebrated and none of you, or very few of you, would have gone through the studies as well. But still I hope that all of you would be having a thorough reading so that you'll be able to have a better understanding in the next class. Alright. Thanks a lot for being. Have a superb day ahead. Thank you.